Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's another Monday. It is 5:30 here in the Central Standard Time Zone. It is 6:30 in the East, 3:30 in the West. And it is time for another episode of How It All Works. Thank you to our audience. I see there's several of you already here and waiting and ready for this discussion. I'm excited about this discussion. As some of you know, some of you may not know, education technology is where I spent a good amount of the, I guess, most recent employment history for myself has been education technology. So I am excited about being able to contribute to discussion and also excited about the panelists. We've got a fairly robust panel of education technology leaders, and they look at it from various different perspectives, different vantage points. And so we want to hash it all out. We want to, peek behind the veil a little bit. We want to figure out how it all works. So let's get into it right now. All right, so we are here, and this is the panel. Even as I'm I'm looking at everybody on screen, it's amazing. I'm so glad. I just have to take a moment right at the beginning to say a word of thanks to each one of you for your willingness to just come aside for a little bit and chat about our profession, about education technology and its impact on the world around us, and especially in this time where we've kind of had to shift drastically for many of us because of the pandemic. So just taking a second now to check in the comments and look and see how many people are there. And we got some people there already. If there are people on the panel that you have come to see, shout them out in the comments. This is the time. Also, we want to encourage you to take a second and share the stream. There may be friends of yours, people who are considering education technology as a career, or if your child or your family member is getting ready to head off to college, and there may be some tips and tricks, some nuggets of wisdom that this panel can share with you to be able to have that experience be all that and then some. So now that we have done that piece, I want to take a moment to go around the digital room here and do our introductions. And we're going to start right next to me with Dr. Kimberly Marshall. Can you just share a little bit about yourself, about your about where you currently work, and a little bit about your road or your journey with education technology?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, or evening in the Eastern time, I
Yes,
guess.
indeed.
As he stated, I'm Kimberly Marshall, and I'm currently the Vice President and CIO at Morehouse College. I've been in higher ed and IT for about 20 years. I think I've stopped counting when I realize I'm getting older when I say that.
Uh-oh.
But it's been a great experience working in higher ed because I get to work a lot with the students and the faculty in the arena. So I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's been stressful to say the least, but, we overcome it and, just hope to continue along the journey, and hopefully we can empower students and faculty to use some of the ed tech that is out there now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And again, really glad to have you on the panel and some of your unique experiences. I know you came out of you used to deal with your LMS system at one of the colleges you worked at. Is that correct?
Yeah, I worked at some years ago. I worked at Meharry Medical College.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
I was director of academic computing as well as the Blackboard administrator there.
Right.
We had a few students, probably at that time, about 900 med and dental students. So we were dealing with more of the professional students at that time.
Right. Well, yeah, we're gonna come back to that. We're looking forward to hearing some more from you as we get into the discussion. Bill Wolfer, it's your time to speak. I see that you're still muted, but I'm going to do this while you're unmuting yourself. If anything that I have done, you can attribute all the successes and failures to this man right here. I'm just joking, but
right.
Bill Wolfer and I go a long way.
I take credit for only your successes.
Bill Wolfer is at Andrews University, and he was my college advisor. So. Man, we go way back, and so glad to be not only have that experience, but to be colleagues and friends now. But Bill, tell the folks a little bit about you and Andrews University, and your unique perspective on education technology.
Sure, but before I do that, I will say you were a great student.
Thank you.
I so appreciate our long-term friendship for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Marshall. I've been teaching for 30 years. So I beat I'm a teacher in the computer science program. And our program, we have information systems, informatics, data science, computer science, and we're working towards cybersecurity to offer those five. Try to make a nice spread for students to be attracted to us and so forth. I chaired the computing program here at Andrews, and I'm also the innovation director for innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I'm really anxious to hear what you folks have to say about the relationship between IT at your schools and with the department and the collaborations and relationships you guys have.
Absolutely.
But for me, I always say I have the best job in the world. Because we get paid to do this. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of, there can be challenges, but really there's not a lot of, other than you get to explore and move forward. And so I thoroughly love my job. So
while I was listening to you, I forgot totally to put up this slide, but either way, you covered all of the stuff that's on there anyway. So, thank you, Bill, for being here, and again, just the long-term friendship over the years. It's just been amazing. Robert Henley. Yeah. We wanted to get all aspects of education technology, and I'm so glad that you're able to lend your voice to this conversation. So tell the folks a little bit about you and where you are and some of the things that you have been up to lately.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I currently work for the Florida Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. I'm the innovation coordinator. We operate 30 schools throughout the state of Florida, 30 K-12 schools.
Yes.
And I was hired 3 years ago to reimagine education through innovation through all those schools.
Nice.
And so I also serve in two other roles. I'm the Innovation Lab Director at Forest Lake Academy, just coming off of a 3-year pilot there, and we're going to push that out to all of our schools. And
Excellent.
in that program, kids are doing authentic learning. You know, STEM C is what I call it: STEM plus computing, invention, and entrepreneurship.
Excellent.
We wrap curriculums around kids' interests or passion. That's our informal. Our formal, I teach mechatronics, biomechatronics, human-computer interface, and innovation formally. So just excited about what we're doing in that space. I've been teaching for 27 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's some rivalry here.
Yes, sir. Backgrounds in biology, chemistry, and computer science.
Good.
And I also served as an IT director and a communication director for about, I guess, 15 of those 27 years. There. So I'm just excited to be here among this great group of people. One last thing, we are just launching the Florida Conference Institute for Innovation. Launching innovation in a school setting, a K-12 school setting, is more than just, putting a lab together. So we're focusing on training teachers,
Yeah.
Holding their hands, being with them, coaching them through the entire process, design thinking, project, problem-based learning, all that stuff. So
Good.
yeah, good to be here.
Excellent. So again, thank you for being here. And we're looking forward to some of what you'll have to share as we get into the conversation. Michael Cato. Good. So now you told me how to pronounce it a second ago. I've already
It gets
forgotten.
everybody. It's all right.
It's
Bowdoin
better for
College.
you to say it anyway. So,
That's all right.
but yeah, please tell the folks a little bit about yourself and yeah, your perspective on education technology.
Sure. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. I'm Michael Cato. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer here at Bowdoin College. We're in Brunswick, Maine. We are a 226-year-old selective liberal arts institution, 1,800 students, so pretty small. We've got a really interesting history in some very unique ways. I've been here for just over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to smile, Kimberly, because I've had 20 years in higher ed IT as well, but mostly because I came in the side door, not because I'm as young as you are. I actually have a bachelor's degree in zoology from Andrews. That's actually where I got my start.
Oh, wow.
And I see a couple of my friends are actually on the comments now.
Cool.
And had a really great experience there. I was not focusing on a career in IT. In fact, at that time, it was just computer science. Andrews didn't have an information systems program at the time that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so long story how I got into it, but I've been really grateful for the experiences. And I started my career in higher ed at UNC Chapel Hill, worked there for 5 years, and then worked at UNC Charlotte for 5 years. And then in 2013, took a position at Vassar College just outside of New York City in the Hudson Valley, and then came here to Bowdoin. So I've spanned, my friends are fond of teasing me. I've found increasingly small institutions. So Chapel Hill with 27,000 students, and then now I'm at 1,800. So I've been working my way down in the size of institutions and working my way farther north, apparently, too. So,
wow.
But yeah, so I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad, man. I know you've got some unique perspectives. I know we talked about some of the projects at Vassar, and interested to see what's happening at Bowdoin. So. Yep. Our last but not least at all, Michael Berman, Dr. Michael Berman, but I generally just call you Michael. And I'm so glad you're able to come and to lend your voice and perspective to this conversation as well. I'm going to throw up a slide real quick before you speak. This thing just blew me away. I was trying to find some content to put on your bio page, and I was just like, my goodness, 23 campuses, 52,000 faculty and staff. My word. That is a country, And the one part here is one in every 20 Americans holding a college degree is a graduate of a CSU, and our alumni are 3.7 million strong. I thought that was amazing. So tell us a little about CSU and your unique perspective on education technology.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Kirk, for including me and including me with such a wonderful group of speakers. It's really a privilege to be here and be part of this group. I started my educational life at an institution similar to Bowdoin. I went to Pomona College. So I started out at a small liberal arts college. I got a degree from Rutgers, so I went to a big state institution. And then I became a computer science professor, similar to Bill. And really, I happened to be at the time when before most campuses had internet, and it was really my quest to bring the internet to my state college in New Jersey that really got me sucked into the administrative side.
Right.
I treasure the many years I was able to be a computer science professor, but now I've been really in the IT side now for more than 20 years too, and it's really fun to be able to see things at so many different layers and so many different levels. I mean, I'm obviously very distant from compared to when I was a computer science professor and I was there with the students all the time. I was a CIO of a big system. It's somewhat more distant, but I try to always keep that perspective, and I try to, when I describe my my role, people say, "Well, are you a technical person?" And I try to consider myself an educator first and a technician second. So I'm really about education, about the transformational power of education for students, about how it can create greater equality and pull people up in the world. That's really what I'm here for.
Excellent.
And the technology, I want to use the technology where it makes sense and where it provides a positive difference. Because I don't know, we may talk about it, but technology also harms a lot of people. So
it sure does.
We want to be thinking about taking a very critical and pro-human and pro-student view of how we use technology, in my opinion.
Love that. Good. And again, those in the comments, man, just sound off where you're from, and our show question for today. I'm just gonna throw that up now, which is, we don't normally throw it up this early, but I'm gonna throw it up now. Shout out your high school or college in the comments. Tell us where you went, and we'll try to pull some of that in as we get into our discussion. First question I wanted to throw out there. This is one that I tried to put out some feelers in our community group on Facebook to say what would be a question that you wanted, and this is one. It's generic, and so I'm very interested to see what you guys' answer is going to be. But what is a day in your life like? So we've just kind of gone through and talked about the unique perspectives and vantage points and things that you do. But what is a day in your life like right now? And I know that Michael, you just finished speaking, but we're just gonna start with you and make our way back around. Don't want you to have to wait as long as you did this past time to speak. And we'll make our way around. Not all the questions are gonna be everybody, but we'll just throw it out there and see who speaks to it. But this one, I did want to kind of get a feel for. What is a day in the life like? And if something is said that let's say Michael says something and Bill, you want to jump in because it resonates, by all means, let's just have an open conversation. What is a day in the life of education technology leader like?
So in July, we collected statistics on how much use of Zoom it had made between January and June. And it came out to 1.1 billion minutes of Zoom communications. And I pretty much feel like I've been on most of them personally. So.
Wow. Yeah.
So my day is probably like most people's days right now. I get up and fortunately, I'm fortunate enough to not have to work in my bedroom. I got a room down the hall. So I speak to my room down the hall.
There you go.
And I get on the computer. But I mean, I think really when you're a CIO certainly at a large institution, it's all communication, right? I mean, what I'm doing all day long is communicating with different people, trying to make sure we're all on the same page, trying to empower people to solve problems. I found the longer I've been a CIO that the less I do, the more effective I am. It's really about empowering other people to
I like that.
when I jump in and try to provide a technical solution, it's usually a really bad idea. So it's really about communication, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's on Slack, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on email, maybe a phone call occasionally. It's all about talking with people. That's really what I spend most of my time doing.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else? Anybody?
Well, yeah, I so related to what was just said, Michael, in that communication is everything. But I found my life has been totally upside down in that I so enjoy the human interaction I get every day with kids. And I'm sitting in my office right now, and it's kind of echoing in here. And typically, with all the energy of the students as an old man, right? And yes, I am getting old. And I so miss that. And I feed off of that. And so the day in the life is the communication. I bet you I've logged an equal amount of minutes on Zoom as you're just talked about, because of constantly Zooming students and friends, and because I always saw in college, the kids you get to work with are in transition. They're young professionals jumping in to get trained for that special journey. And so when they graduate, they're instantly my colleagues. And so they're in that progression right there. And so I just desperately miss it. And so the day of my life has been pretty lonely lately. So I just come into work and it's just way too quiet. And I love chaos.
Man, that's good. So, I mean, so I've been away. I've stepped away from the day to day working as a education technology leader, but I do know I do resonate with what both of you have shared in terms of feeding off of the energy of young people. Yes, I can call them young people, but also just the communication aspect and making sure, essentially the trains are running on time. And that is a unique perspective that a lot of people do not really get about an educational technology leader. You would assume that this is a highly technical person who can do all of the jobs of the people that are working for them. But that's not always the case. In fact, a lot of CIOs come to the CIO seat from a different vocation, a different discipline altogether. Michael says he's got a degree in zoology, so they come in various different ways, and then of course Dr. Marshall says she came through the ranks, worked managing an LMS system and being in charge of several other portions of technology before sitting in that seat. So you got many different paths that lead to that spot, but I find it interesting that when you are in that top leadership role, communication is really key in terms of being successful and keeping things moving. If nobody else wants to touch that one, yeah, go ahead.
If I can, it's interesting. One of the things I've been thinking about, to a couple of the points that were already made, that the technology, we've been saying for years, that technology is literally touching everything in the institutions. And my colleagues at community colleges, K-12, are all saying the same thing. It's showing up everywhere.
Right.
This experience, COVID, and the responses through our institutions, I think has dramatically amplified and perhaps revealed that to more people in the institution. That just literally, this is what we meant all along about the pieces we were putting in place, truly being important to the mission of the institution. And we've been able, I think, in many ways to demonstrate that at scale in ways that we just never had the opportunity before. So I think that's been wonderful. What's become also hard, though, the sheer pace of what we're doing has sped up so much faster in the last 6 months than the 19 and a half years I spent working in this industry before then. I've said multiple times, this experience is unique to anything I've even attempted before. Even the large scale project we've done for major system replacements, nothing holds a candle to the complexities of a situation that touches on the academic side, health and wellness side, the financial side. I mean, I would be willing to bet if you asked most of us to look at our calendars for the last days, we've been in budget conversations and health and safety conversations. And these are just very different situations than many people have expected us to be contributing in. And I think I'm really looking forward to how we build on this moving forward. as we are all exhausted right now and trying to how do you help lead your teams through this really complicated, really high stakes situation.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with Dr. Berman and Michael Cato. Life for me,
looks like it. Yeah, there you go.
with or without the pandemic, is, you know, you wake up in the morning, you're checking your email for any mission critical items, or you're making your to-do list, not necessarily responding to all email, but just making your to-do list or routing email in the right places, because you, not that you can't answer, but you can't be all things to all people.
Yes.
So you have to let some of it go. So you kind of do, once your feet hit the floor, you've already spent the hour working before you know, and then you hit the shower and you're back on your phone or on your computer. You're in meetings, you're checking your calendar for meetings that just been added.
Mercy.
When you had something planned for that spot, now you no longer have that spot. And as Michael's stated, you know, everything has sped up, you know, more than we thought we could handle. Projects that we had on the list maybe 2 years out, maybe even a year out, just has, you know, happened in, you know, a month or so now.
Right.
And you're wondering, like, how did we get through it all? Or you're learning technology on the spot yourself.
There you go.
Because the perception is that you, as an IT professional, know it all. So no matter what it is, everyone is expecting you to know it. And so you're trying to learn on the spot. So you can also, you know, teach everyone else. And not to mention, there's something unique that, you know, maybe you guys are not dealing with as much. And that's being a mother when you have kids or younger kids that are also in virtual school.
Yeah.
And one example of this morning, my 5-year-old started virtual school on Zoom. So, you know, if you ever had a 5-year-old,
yes,
getting them to sit down for hours on Zoom is like, you know, pulling teeth. And I'm trying to have my meeting on Zoom, and I'm, you know, muting the wrong button. I have 2 computers in front of me, and I'm muting one phone and unmuting the other. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm walking away and she's calling my name, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, but, you know, my husband has been a big champion of this, except today, you know, he had to go on site himself. So I was kind of holding it down.
Yeah.
So it is a lot, you know, been added since the pandemic. And we're all mentally and physically tired, to say the least. We thought we were tired before this. Now we're like, you know, this is really, you know, really painful. So sometimes we have to step away. And one of the things that I started doing is just, you know, trying to step away from it all, is try to get up and exercise. Or get out the door as soon as I can. And I feel like, you know, maybe it's age, but I feel like my eyes has gotten worse just in the past few months, being on the computer screen so much. And I'm, you know, I can have my glasses on and I still can't see. I take them off. And so, and I heard someone else say that, and I was like, oh, good, it's not just me.
Safety in numbers. Yeah. No, I resonate totally with everything you just shared. I see Robert has unmuted himself. I want to make sure you're able to weigh in as well. But I just find it interesting as we are talking through the different dynamics of the burden, the weight of all that technology touches in our different institutions and organizations. It's interesting that I think all of us would agree that some of this we already knew, or we already saw. Was a reality that we were aware of, but a number of others have now come to that realization as well.
Yeah, so a day in my life, as you heard, I wear several hats. You know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm an educator, teacher there. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm trying to push this to all 30 of our schools. So it's challenging. And I brought that on myself. When they hired me, they wanted me to try to, you know, inspire all 30 schools to be innovative. And I said, well, you can't do that unless people see a model. They need to see a product. And so for 3 years, I've been doing, you know, burning a candle at both ends there, modeling what innovation and problem-based learning and design thinking looks like in the classroom, because it's one thing to tell a teacher how to do something. It's a completely another thing to show them. When they see it, they get on board. So that's a lot of my day. And development, seeking partners, industry partners, higher ed partners to work with. Do a lot of that.
You're looking to I know you're looking to build some pipelines too for some of your students as well.
Yeah, I call it K-20 education. Been working with Bill there at Andrews and Oakwood University and Loma Linda, so that kids can start research in the high school and continue that research, in college, and then go on to graduate school and start startups at the K-12 level. Get patents. We just signed a contract with an IP firm so that our kids can actually pursue patents. And I have kids working on some great stuff. And when kids find their passion, and when you can wrap technology or when you can wrap a curriculum around that passion, they run.
Yeah.
I was reading a book the other day, and there was a kid in there saying, I hate going to school doing stuff that's important to teachers.
Ooh.
I want to go to school and do stuff that's important to me.
Wow.
And so that's what we try to do. We try to give them the opportunity to do things that are important to them. So that's a big challenge there.
I'm gonna stay with Robert for just a second longer. I know I do my research on all of you. It's like the CIA. Whenever I have somebody on the show, I kind of do some digging. And I saw some posts that you made recently about some solutions that some of your students were making in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. So I teach an innovation class. Kids go through my former track. So I try to teach the kids to make anything, with CAD software, 3D printing, the mechatronics. And so as COVID hit, we did a pivot, and I said, okay, guys, you're going to put your innovation projects away and we're going to work with some PPE stuff. And
Right.
So I had some kids actually design original N95 masks, 3D modeled them, 3D printed them. And we actually went to Advent Health in Daytona, and the mask passed the OSHA fit test.
Nice.
To be used in the hospital. And while we tested it out, it actually met a latent need that the hospital had with the mask, and that was communicating better through masks. And so our kids are doing those things, and I have another group of kids working on a stroke rehab device for Loma Linda Hospital, and so the kids love it. And so for me, it's about not just using technology to facilitate learning.
Right.
It's using technology where the kids are creating original works of knowledge, and that's where I try to steer our kids.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to weigh in on any of that, but just checking in our comments here to see some of the things that people are saying. Bill Wolf or Kevin Scott saying, "I owe you a call."
I saw that.
Somebody was sharing, that they really like some of the content that's being shared, relevant and practical. And then just a few other comments that are there. Pretty good. One of the other things I wanted to shift to is in terms of, I think I guess again a recurring theme, and Dr. Marshall really highlighted this, is that the weight of what we're doing and how are we coping. Some of the things she talked about in terms of getting out there and doing some exercise. What are you finding in terms of your team? How are they managing some of the pressures and stresses of the added weight that this current pandemic has placed on education technology?
Some of my staff.
Oh, go ahead, Robert.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I know some of my staff, colleagues I work with, they're bicyclists, so they'll ride bicycles on the weekend and go 30, 40 miles at a time. I try to focus on yard work.
I love yard work. That's where I get all my thinking done.
Yes.
I've got a lawn to cut right after this is done.
Yeah, I mean, because when COVID first hit, I was literally getting up around, I'd be at my desk at 7 in the morning, and I'd get off at 10 at night.
Yeah.
Nonstop. So yeah, it's challenging.
Not sustainable. Yeah. Bill, you were going to say something?
A couple things, but for exercise, I get up about 4:30 in the morning. I walk, and then I go golfing every morning. I'm a terrible golfer. I can hit par for the course in about third hole. But Yeah, it's my guys are constantly very conscious of exercising, and we have some weightlifters, some people who do cross country bicycling and so forth. There's a very important aspect to exercise that otherwise you just become lethargic, you become numb almost, and you have to do it. But if I can go back for just a sec, talk about Robert's program. I got to go down and observe it for 5 days, what he's doing with project-based learning. And one of the things that I think is very exciting is watching how he can, or he builds curriculum around the project. So students are getting a customized curriculum. They get it all eventually, but they get customized experience and all, whether it's in biology, math, chemistry, depends on the project they're working on.
Yeah.
And why is that important? And this is something, Robert, if put you on the spot a little bit, but one of the things that really impressed me was had a young man that really was disengaged. And so I was talking to him, and very nice kid. And he was telling me, he said, yeah, his interest was in music and he just wanted to be into hip hop, and which is great. But when I came back down about a month later to visit with Robert and his program, this kid met me at the door and was showing me his programs.
Wow.
That Robert had touched this kid and got him so engaged that he had made a heart monitor for his kid's sister who was having a heart problem. He just got inspired and said, you know what? It's happening around me. He was immersed in it. Then rather than just sitting in the corner goofing around or just being disengaged, he was totally engaged. And he was, like I say, he was the first one that said, come look what I'm doing.
Good.
And so that's really important. And so, Robert, I didn't want that to get away from you. So I guess I won't put you on the spot. I have plenty of time.
and if I can add to that, it was so important for the kids to see Bill from a higher ed institution walking through my doors at the school. And that industry partnership, that K-20 partnership, I can say whatever I want to say in the classroom, but when I have a college professor coming through or a physician coming through or whomever it is coming through and talking to the kids and taking interest in what they're doing, that inspires them to dive deeper because, wow, this is really important. What I'm working on is really important. This person has shared with me how important it is because, kids tune out teachers all the time, and so that having Bill come through and then having a pathway where the kids can leave my school and go where Bill is and have that connection, I think is valuable.
Excellent. I'm looking at the two Michaels to see if either of you wanted to chime in, but before we look at some of the stories, he's pointing at Michael Cato. So
the other square.
Go ahead. If you had,
interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, the piece I wanted to add, you asked specifically on how do you manage your teams? How do you lead your teams through a sustained effort like this, right? There was a conversation we had here earlier on, so March, April, that look, I know this feels like a sprint. I know we're doing a lot of things really quickly, but the foreseeable future, this is going to be our reality through the rest of the semester. So it's unsustainable for you to be working right through lunch every day. And, the description of coming in super early in the morning and working late at night, it's Herculean effort, and I really respect it, but you cannot sustain that. And breaking that cycle became one of the really hard things to do when, at least in my experience, a lot of people who are attracted to tech we get really jazzed by the solving problems, right?
Yes.
And helping people meet their needs. But you put that mentality into a situation like the one we were in, and we will easily burn ourselves out, right? So we started telling people, we need you to block your afternoon and take it off. I need you to take vacation. No, I know you can't travel the way you normally do, but I insist on you taking some time away because I need you fresh in May. I need you fresh in June and July and August. Excellent. And now as we're looking ahead to the beginning of the semester. And so it's just been interesting because when this began, we discovered there was a lot of things that we never thought you could do virtually that just became possible because everybody had to do it. So, exactly. From the mundane to exercise programs, I owe you a nudge, Kirk, because I saw you posting about CrossFit recently. I'm 7 years in and still really enjoying my experience. CrossFit gyms never do this virtually, and suddenly we had to, right?
Right.
The things that my grandmother passed away in March, and she was in Jamaica. There was no way we could all travel, so we did the memorial service over one of the virtual connections. And yes, it was a sad experience, but for those with Jamaican backgrounds, the night before the funeral is always a celebration.
Yes.
We had easily 45 different connections from all over the world,
Oh,
multiple
man.
people on each connection. Now, the part of it was amazing, but the downside was it was my grandmother, right? So it's my older family members who never do this regularly and all trying to talk over each other at the same time.
Yeah.
It was chaos, but it was my family, right? So as I'm sitting with my 4.5-year-old son, just being able to, show him and show him that this is family members we haven't met at scale. So it's just been interesting how the challenges are definitely there, and there have also been these opportunities for us to demonstrate what's possible in ways that we just never thought of before.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. You bring up some really good points. Making sure that your team is fresh. Man, yeah, and there are, unfortunately, that's not everybody's scenario and everybody's situation, and there are cases where sometimes leadership, as an educational leader, as an education technology leader, you don't have the latitude to make some of those hard and fast decisions for your team because the requirements are still coming in from administration fast and furious. So it's a push-pull game, but you do have to try to be mindful of those pieces as well. Thank you for sharing that. Michael, Berman, I think, was going to say something.
Well, just to respond to what you just said, I feel very fortunate to work where I work because I really do feel my institution has shown that it's oriented towards the health and the safety of the family.
Good.
I'm really appreciative of that. We're trying the best we can, and we had our virtual summer picnic on Friday. We had some good online games, but it wasn't the same. Obviously, wasn't the same in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
But coming back to what Dr. Marshall said, I really am concerned about the families, the people who have families at home, especially as we head into the fall. I mean, one of the people I work with, she starts sending me emails at 2 a.m. with her work, and on the one hand, I wanted to say no, you really shouldn't be up at 2 a.m. working. But on the other hand, she's got a 3-year-old and a baby at home, and she's the primary caretaker.
Wow.
As most women are, it's usually the woman, and so I'm concerned about the stress on the families, and let's not forget the social milieu that we live in, and
yes, it
all
is.
the violence and the racism, and my team, probably 25-30% of them are Asian American or Asian, and they're seeing things being said about related to the disease that just aren't true, but they're being pointed out as a scapegoat. And so I think what I hope is a good thing that may come out of it for many of us as leaders is just realizing how everyone has their challenges, each in their own way, and trying to be sympathetic to that, and just, I think it's brought it to the surface. It was there before, and people were being challenged by the social environment that we're in. They're being challenged by their health, by their family needs. It's just so apparent. You're going into people's homes now,
right,
and you're seeing the children climbing on the lap, and I just think it's really incumbent on our leaders to make sure everyone feels included, that they feel that it's okay, that we know you're doing the best you can, and if a meeting gets interrupted because somebody's kid walks in, we need to look at that as a plus, and not as a minus, and and then also really reach out to our staff and say, hey, it's okay, I know you're really, really working hard, and I appreciate what you can do, but
goes a long way.
It's not going to be perfect for a long time.
Yeah, that's very good points. Excellent points. I know my goodness, it's 6:12 already. We're wrapping. We're going rapidly towards where we need to land. I wanted to, for those that actually did send in some things, Michael, this clip is one that you sent in. I want to play it, and then hoping that we can have some discussion around of what we are seeing here.
I think creativity really applies to nursing, maybe in a non-traditional way, because what we know happens in nursing is that we're dealing with the human factor, and we have human beings and things change. And so I think a lot of that creativity aspect started early in my nursing career, and now it's evolved into something very different in a way that I can rethink and be very creative about what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching students. So in using mixed and virtual reality, I think we are better preparing CSU Channel Islands nursing students. With virtual reality, it's a little bit different angle where students actually get to embody the patient, and they suddenly get to understand a chronic disease or deficit from the patient perspective. So it's almost a walk in the patient's shoes for a short time, have a sense of what it's like to have Alzheimer's disease or macular degeneration and hearing loss, and they're able to perceive what that might feel like. Students are blown away by the technology that we can use. I think they're very surprised about some of the emotional connections and feelings that they get from trying those experiences. I think my favorite part about teaching is when students have the aha moment and they really start to put the pieces together. And it could be a skill that they develop and they're so excited that they've just, gotten that first IV start. Those are really great moments that are exciting for the student, but exciting for me too, because it means that what I'm doing is working. If we teach empathy at CSU Channel Islands with our nursing students, then my hope is really that they can leave this university prepared to care for every single patient in a way that any individual would care for their, somebody. And so if we can teach empathy here at CSU Channel Islands, then we're doing a good job in preparing them for the profession.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal work, phenomenal use of technology. Absolutely integrating it into what they're doing there. Talk to us a little bit about that project, Michael.
Yeah, that's been a really exciting project, and I want to mention, when you listen to Jamie speak, one of my favorite professors, it's all about students, it's about care, it's about empathy, it's about creativity, and it's only about this much about technology. But the technology becomes an enabling factor that allows her to engage with those creative ideas.
Absolutely.
And in fact, right now she's working on how to provide virtual reality experiences to students at home that don't have access to the virtual reality.
Excellent.
Which is quite an interesting challenge. But I think I'm sure that not all 25,000 of our faculty are as equally as creative as Dr. Hoffman, but it is remarkable. Dr. Hannon's. But it is remarkable the way faculty have stepped up in the last few months, the incredible amount of work that they've done to become more adept at using technology tools, because they care about their students and they want to see them succeed. So,
excellent. I love the how you, I guess, broke up the pie to say it's just this much about technology. But I love the fact that technology is the enabler, and that's what it should be. And it's really, really, when it's well done, it's impactful in ways that we had not imagined. So phenomenal. Anybody else wanted to speak to that before we move on to the next clip?
Yeah, I just love how they're using technology as a value-added proposition. COVID-19 has exposed the outdatedness of education. And working in a private school system, you got parents paying, $13,000 a year, for education, and then all of a sudden it's virtual. They're going to want to take their kids somewhere else.
Right.
In Florida, we have the Florida Virtual School, which is free. But being able to use technology not just as that facilitator of education, but to enhance it, that's that value-added proposition.
Yes.
And so parents are going to be more likely to send their kids to an institution that uses technology to enhance education in that way.
Yeah.
And so we all have to make that pivot.
That's good. I'm looking at your, I guess I was looking to see did anybody unmute themselves. Okay, Michael.
Well, the one thing I would add is I do think that there is no question that this experience has demonstrated a lot of possibilities. Bowdoin is like I said earlier, it's a 226-year-old institution. We had 2 people on campus who had ever taught an online course as of spring, and neither of them were faculty members. Right? That is not our model. We are highly intensive, highly intimate. We bring students to campus. Our student success measures are among the highest in the country. And across all backgrounds. Our students of color do better here and in institutions like Bowdoin than they do at almost any other type of institution in the country. And so that's been the challenge for me, especially because I have the background in much larger institutions where we were doing a lot of really aggressive online education work and really trying to figure out how to bend the cost curve. And I'm not saying that liberal arts institutions shouldn't do the work. We really should, and we really are. But I am saying that stepping into this experience for the fall for us, we were trying to figure out how to do this in a way that respected and protected the pieces that make us as good at educating students as we are, while appreciating that we need to do it safely. And Michael, you alluded to this earlier, but I realized you didn't. I give so much applause to the California State Institution and the choice. You all made the choice in May, if I'm not mistaken, to go primarily online for the fall. They were really, really early. We announced in June. We were one of the few among our liberal arts institution peers that announced that early, that we were going to teach all of our classes online. So even for the small percentage of students we're bringing to campus, they're still going to take their classes online with the exception of one course. And we were able to make those decisions because we had the resources to do it. So this is not something I take lightly. I think that's been the hard part for this, especially for higher ed, but I think this is true for K through 12 as well, that our financial structures are such that many institutions your budget just can't handle not having the fees. It's not even just the tuition, not having the fees that so much of the operating budget is based on.
Wow.
And so it's made the decisions for the fall just really hard to do. I am excited about what's possible. I'm excited to see how our students will benefit from the creativity our faculty are demonstrating for the fall. But I don't want to downplay this at all. Bill, I tip my hat. Robert, same thing. I tip my hat to you as educators. The amount of effort it's going to take it is taking to get ready for the fall, and the amount of effort it will take to teach in the fall dwarfs anything any of us have ever done before.
Absolutely.
And so how we are able to support and recognize our faculty and support our students, I think, is one of the great challenges and opportunities ahead.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Well, actually, when we go back to was your day start like, really, everybody's been leaning in very hard, preparing for next week. We have freshman week this week, but next week, and having hybrid classes in face-to-face classes and remote classes is, especially when students are 2/3 the way through their degrees, if they were to switch or whatever, it's just not practical. How do we do that? And one thing for Andrews, where we have a challenge is because we're so international through the missionary work and stuff like that. We have students from all over the world, as I'm sure all colleges do. But our school is the most international. It's like the
always in that
fourth
top
or
10.
fifth international school. Yeah, and just time zones. And how do you do that? If it's 4:00 in the afternoon, it's 4:00 in the morning. And we have all those things that we're struggling with. And so I so appreciate technology and how we can harness it, but really to get our subjects out there. For me, trying to get, we're very fortunate because there's so many great videos out there that are teaching programming. Let's say our first freshman series of Computer Science 1. Programming is, there's so many resources out there, yet students still want that connection with their school or the school of their choice. And how do you make it value added to come here? And as a private school, like Robert was saying, it is expensive.
Yeah.
Yet I'm surprised. My classes, I'm looking at one of my classes. I think I have about 60, 70 kids in there in my virtual classes. And I'm sitting there, oh my goodness, this is a wonderful blessing. But how in the world, when there's so many resources out there, but students are really looking for those connections as well.
Yeah.
And technology is allowing for that.
Yeah, that's big. That's big. What we are, I want to play one more story that was submitted. This one is a little more on the staff side of the house. A really cool and unique way of having remote workers interact meaningfully while still, being at home. So this is one that Dr. Marshall will speak to after the clip. pretty cool.
So I must say, the video is the vendors of the Double Robotics website, so it is not ours. So I do not own the right to that video. Let me just say that. But as Kirk has said, if you look at the video, it shows that it's a great tool for staff, but what it really doesn't show that it is a great tool for students as well. I've heard someone, I think maybe Berman in both Cato, in those areas where you have labs and your students are not on campus, we too are all virtual this semester and we start in a couple days. But if your students have lab and it's, a part of the curriculum where most of the learning is going to occur in the lab, this is a great tool that's not that expensive and a sharp learning curve that faculty can use so that their students can see what is going on in the lab. As well as, if you work in a hospital, nurses, or anywhere in the world, I can be here at home and drive the robotic in the lab. So I don't have to be there with the robot to drive it. And you can also let someone else drive. So if you wanted your students to, drive for themselves, they could do that also. I think shown in the picture may have been the Double Robotic 3. Okay. I've only used a version lower than that, but they're pretty much the same, with some upgrades as technology go through the different upgrades. But I wanted to share that in case there were, any faculty members or even staff that was looking for a way to, offer some extra remote learning without having to, pay a lot out of pocket.
Right.
Using some of the things that you may already have, such as an iPad, is what is connected to the robot. And sometimes we think of a robot, we think of, this big machine
right.
Doing all the work, and we forget about the computer parts. So it's just an iPad, that you connect to it with some Wi-Fi. And then you have application on your phone or, another iPad that allows you to drive it.
Nice. Yeah, these are some of the things that have become part and parcel with how we're working and how we're interacting these days. Robert, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, as we're winding down, one of the things I do want to say is equity has been a big concern of ours. The classes I teach are all hands-on. You got to have a laptop.
Yes, it's true.
And in March, when we went virtual, kids are home, 2-3 kids at a time with a parent who's working and one laptop. Or they don't have internet connection, or if they have a laptop, it's a Chromebook or it's an outdated Windows, 98 system, and they can't run the program. Ooh. So those are some of the issues I ran into. And then vision is the other thing. 3 years ago, when I was hired, one of the things I pushed for us to do was to implement a district-wide technology system using Office 365 and Teams. And we had gone through the process of getting that groundwork put in place. And when COVID hit, basically overnight, we were able to transition right into virtual learning. But not everyone is in a position to do that. And so vision and equity, those are big issues.
Yeah. Digital equity. Anybody else want to speak to that in terms of your perspective of where you are, how that is affecting what's happening?
Well, it's a huge issue in California. We're very concerned because we've made a lot of strides in trying to improve student success in recent years, and in trying to close the achievement gap between different groups so that everyone has equal chance of success. And I'm worried this is going to be a real setback because we know that it's going to be the students that have the most economic and social challenges are going to be the ones that, as Robert was saying, we sent a survey out and somebody said, yeah, I have internet at home, but when all 9 of us get on it at the same time, it doesn't work very well, So, and plus we have people in places with no coverage at all. I'm sure all of you have seen that. So, it's lack of equipment, it's lack of bandwidth, and it's also just lack of a place to work, a place to and we know how many of our students have food insecurity and housing insecurity.
Yes,
they have broadband digital insecurity on top of that. So. Unfortunately, this is the situation where those that have the biggest challenges are getting hit the hardest, and we just have to remember that and try to do the best we can to figure out strategies to help them, which we could do a whole other show on probably.
Yeah, I'm absolutely, no doubt about it. Just that one topic alone. Go ahead, Michael.
I'll just add one success on that. We've been trying to figure that same question out. And so for the fall, we just announced a couple of weeks ago that we are providing iPad Pros with the Apple Pencil 2, the Magic Keyboard with the touchpad in it.
Oh, wow.
And we picked the iPads that have the built-in cellular internet. So we're providing it for all of our students. We're shipping it to them at home for our domestic students even for those who are coming to campus, we're trying to ship it to them at home before they get here.
Phenomenal.
And that we have committed that we will pay for the bandwidth for those students who would have a challenge paying it for themselves. And it doesn't solve everything because, cellular internet is still cellular internet. But we think that would provide them at least their own dedicated connection if they're in situations where multiple family members are on the home Wi-Fi. So I'll check back in a couple of months to let you know how it goes. But it was exciting to be able to do something as an institution for the 1,800 students who are here.
Yeah, and so your size really makes that is attainable because of the size
and resources.
Absolutely, yeah. Dr. Marshall, you're still muted. Sorry, let me. Yeah,
worse than some of my Zoom meetings.
No.
To Cato's point, we just had a project such as the one that he's getting ready to implement. We partnered with Microsoft and UPS to give out all of those surfaces to our freshman students, as well as some of the other students and transfer students. And UPS, was able to partner with us and get those shipped out for free as well. Many of you know that Morehouse is an all-male college. We have about, 90% of our students receive some type of financial aid. About 60% of our students are from homes with $40,000 or less in income. So be able to provide just something, as Cato stated, is not, going to resolve everything. We do realize that people are still in communities without broadband internet. That we need to address over the years. But we did not want people, going through a semester using their cell phone, trying to take a class, as many, may have had to do when the pandemic started. So we were very grateful to be able to provide those Surface Go to the students.
Okay.
And as well as, Microsoft, again, partnered with us and did all the training for the students as well.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
And doing the same for the faculty so that they're both learning the same tools.
Yes.
The faculty get to see what the students are learning and vice versa, and be able to use some of those tools. Because many of you know that, the students will catch on pretty quick and using a lot of these tools, and they're not afraid to click and just start practicing with things once they found out they exist. And so their expectations increase of the faculty member as well, and they're expecting them to know how to use the tools. So that's why we thought it was important that the faculty get the same type of training as well.
That's excellent. Absolutely. That's excellent. That's a really great project. Thank you for sharing that. I have one more quick thing that I want to throw up here. This is one for Robert Henley to speak to. Walk us through what we're looking at here on screen.
What you're looking at is a high school robotics competition. We've partnered with FIRST, and it's pronounced, or the acronym is for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology, founded by Dean Kamen to get kids excited about technology from a sports standpoint. He realized that we love sports in America, so he came up with a way of making robotics a sport. And you're looking at our gym, and that's I think that's one of the first Tech Talents tournaments, and maybe the region or district championship there.
Nice.
It's a great program, and if I may, in the second grade, my son was labeled with ADD. And he began to use that as a label, and it was at the end of his second grade year. I found out that he would just roam around the classroom, and the teacher would say anything to him. She would just let him walk around. A little black boy walking around the classroom, doing whatever he wants to do. And we got him tested. My wife's a physician, so the first thing we did was put him on medicine. and you know what happens there. And falling back on my educational background, just realized that he had a different learning style and a multiple intelligence factor. And he's a visual spatial learner. He wants to touch things. He wants to make things. And so I started robotics in the 4th grade there, and that changed his life almost overnight. And he will tell you that he felt dumb in the classroom, but robotics pulled something out of him that he did not know he had. And he went on to graduate from high school with a 4.2 GPA. He started his business, and last time as a freshman, because of his skill set, he was able to do an internship at the Penn State Applied Research Laboratory there. So that was just transformational for him. Absolutely. And so while robotics isn't for everybody, it is a pathway. It is an avenue to get some kids going. And so I highly recommend that program.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing the personal piece of the story there. It's very impactful to recognize how technology can really change. Well, I mean, robotics, but yes, technology nonetheless can really have impact and change our lives. One of the things I wanted to kind of end with or land on is what would you this is one last question I want to throw out there to everybody is I guess not maybe one last question. I do have two, but I'm hoping to wrap this thing up. One being, what is for aspiring educational technology professionals, what would you say is your number one piece of advice? Somebody who is coming through school and they're like, man, I want to get into education technology, whether it be higher ed or K-12. What would be your number one piece of advice for that person? Anybody can throw at this one.
Get in a chance to teach.
Okay.
Patience.
Patience.
And I would definitely, just going back to Robert's comment, I know we won't have time to get in on it today, but one of the things he stated is very important when we're looking for educational technology, and we need to look for a platform that is diverse. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about just an ethnicity. He hit on one, mentioning his son had ADD and things of that nature. So we have to find software that is or applications or technology that is not biased, that is treated equal across the board for the students that we're serving, so that we can get good data and outcomes from it.
Yeah. Man, what a point. That is very, very relevant. And that's so good.
I guess one of the things I would share with them is look at what industry is using. AI is a big thing out there, machine learning. Dive into those things. Education, as you all know, is outdated. It was developed to service the second industrial revolution. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. And we're still using technologies and the mindset of that third revolution. So get into that new cutting edge stuff. Take the time to learn it deeply. Pursue certifications. You're not going to get everything that you need in a school of education. You're not going to do it. So get AWS, that certification out there, and learn the stuff. Get the whatever certification you can, but look forward, see where the industry is going, and that's where you should plant your flag.
I like that.
I would say start young as well. If you're going to immerse, start them really young. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's already using the cell phone well, and the iPad well. And and even if they don't, if a student doesn't pursue a degree in a technical area, just like that video we saw at the beginning with the nurse using VR and so forth, and wherever, as you're saying, with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all these types of avenues, just immerse them in it. No matter what the discipline is, technology is a contributor. So,
if I can add to that, I'm sorry. Don't be afraid to let your kids lead out. You're not going to know everything. And I tell my students all the time, I don't know everything. I don't want to know everything. And you're going to learn this better than I do. And that's okay. We're going to learn together, and allow them to teach in class. Give them, a challenge. Hey, Tom, you know this better than I do, man. Can you kind of lead the class in that? So don't be afraid to let those specialists in your classrooms be specialists.
Excellent.
And I think my thoughts are a little bit tied to a number of the things that were said. Michael, your point about teaching, right? Learning to solve problems, because I think at the end of the day, that's what our roles really are about.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, mind you, there are a number of people who make entire careers focusing just on the technology and don't really focus on what you do with the technology.
Right.
But if you have an aspiration to educational technologies broadly as a discipline, but especially leadership positions, they require understanding and not losing sight on that focus of what is it we're trying to accomplish. And one shortcut for me has been, I'm a really big fan of design thinking. I think that the principles can really help you to hone that ability to ask questions all the way along and get really good at solving problems by defining them really well and solving them in increments. And that's a discipline that not everybody has. And if you really want to stand out, if I was talking to someone in college right now and they're trying to figure out how do I stand out on the internship, spend some time on one of those free courses on design thinking and get yourself really comfortable in the language. You will instantly stand out because not a lot of people have that background.
That's good. That's really good. So, and as we get prepared to close, the final question I want to throw to the panel is I hope it will help us to lead into the discussion that we'll have next week on how it all works. And that is, what would you say is how different is technology leadership from just leadership? If you drop off technology, what do you find to be the difference? I mean, so let me I guess paint it a different way slightly. The CIO and the CEO are both a part of the C-suite, or in some places they are, in other places they're not, and that's a very real reality for a lot of people. So I don't want to oversimplify this thing, but the CIO, as some of us have shared, is not so technical. Is far more of a leader. And so what would you say to those who are, they really want to get into that seat, they want to be this technology leader? What would you say to them is the differences between being a technology leader and just being a leader? And how can one navigate that in a way that is impactful, right? To not just be a leader, but to be a good leader. Yeah, I see some of you nodding, and you're like, I'm not touching that question.
Well, it's hard to be a good leader, but I do think that the farther you go in the field, the more the leadership matters, and the less the technology per se matters. And I would say that especially I would say a lot of people, and especially women and people of color, get stopped at a certain level because they're viewed as not looking like a technology person. And I encourage, those of us leaders need to lend a hand to those folks and help them get through that.
Absolutely.
And those people who find themselves in that role, they need to keep pushing forward and not assume that the goal is to become all technology all the time, but to be a well-rounded leader, to be a people person, a communicator, and to try to push through those artificial barriers that, Robert mentioned AWS, I studied to do some AWS certification, but you don't need that to be a CIO. What you really need is to have empathy, be a communicator, and know how to lead, and know enough about technology so that people can't just fool you. So,
Yeah.
But mostly you're going to depend on your staff to do that, because they're going to develop the deep expertise that you just can't possibly have in all the different areas of technology.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
It's so important, Kirk, that I had just started my doctorate in leadership at Andrews. Been teaching for 27 years and leading for 27 years, and just realizing that's a weakness there. And what's most important is understanding change management. You're managing change as a technologist. You're trying to take people from one place and guide them to another place, and that's what leadership is. Understanding that whole system there is really important. And the other thing I would add to that is that empathy aspect of it. As a great leader, you got to have empathy.
Absolutely.
As Michael said, Dr. Mike Berman said, you can be the greatest technologist in the world, but if you can't communicate, if you can't relate to people, then you're not going to be a leader for long. And so leadership is extremely important in today's era.
That's good.
So I just want to amplify a piece of what Michael said as well, that this distinction between technology leadership and leadership, I think impacts people of color even more dramatically when it comes to those search processes,
Wow.
right? Because committees, I've been told multiple times by, unfortunately, search committees have told me multiple times, well, we think you're an awesome leader, but we don't think you're technically as strong as we want. We want someone who is, focuses more on the technology. Now, I've had multiple times, I've had those later institutions kind of acknowledge that that wasn't quite what they were looking for, what they actually needed, but that's how they understood the role. And there's a lot of research that shows that when you interview CIOs about what it takes to do the job well, we rank the technology understanding much lower than our peers do, right? So presidents rank, they think we are much more technical than, they think we need to be much more technical than we believe we need to be to do the job.
Right.
So because it is, to Michael's point, if I don't know how to talk to people, if I don't know how to actually, if I don't have empathy and know how to reflect it, then you're not going to trust me enough to tell me what you're really wrestling with, right? And you're not going to raise your issues and concerns. You're going to wait until you're really frustrated, and then it's too late for us to put a solution in place, or you're going to work around the pieces we put in place because all we did was focus on giving you the right answer, And so there's all those pieces I think are definitely at play. The one piece I would add that I find is different is that the technology leaders have to know the rest of the enterprise, because technology literally touches everything. Right? You have to. You can't be good at your job if you don't understand the operations of the institution. You can't be good at your job if you don't at least have an appreciation of what are the varieties of disciplines that your institution teaches, and how are they different from each other, so that you engage with your faculty in the humanities very differently than you do to your physicists, right? There's pieces that are just different. And if you don't know that, you're going to be stumbling all over yourself and be far less effective than if you're paying attention to that as part of your role.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. One of the things I often say is that the technology leader has learned to speak maybe 10 different languages on a given college campus, because they need to be able to interact with department directors, the C-suite, your executives, and speak that language, to sit with the finance officer and to speak that language, but then also to sit with your own direct reports. And while you may not get into the weeds, you still need to be able to speak that lingo as well. And what I've also found is that this pandemic has exposed that is a great skill to have. And so the CIO, generally speaking, does have that skill, but some of the other members of leadership don't have that skill, and it's hampering institutions. It actually can be the make or break for an institution to have success or not to have success. Man, we had a comment. Oh no, I think you pretty much answered it, but one of the comments was, but should the CIO have the tech background for the greatest success in the role? Doesn't the tech knowledge aid in decision making? And I think that was touched on greatly there, but there is going to be some reliance on some of your team to be able to manage some of those pieces. Did anybody else want to weigh in on that question that we got from the audience before we close it out?
I would say it definitely helped to have some tech background, but you don't have to be the programmer.
Right.
There's many types of technology, as we're talking about here, just ed tech in general, or you want to call it academic technology or academic computing, or even instructional technology. I think we've already spoken on the most important pieces, and we said communication. The only thing I would add to that is you must have critical thinking. You have to have critical thinking, and you can be the most technical person there is and not have critical thinking skills. In this position, you have to be able to multitask. You have to be able to think on the spot and fast. I mean, there's been days I had 2 phones to my ear.
Wow.
Trying to help people, and your team, are relying on you, hoping you have the answer, telling them, what they should do next. And as many of you stated, you can be in meetings and you have one of your team members on the phone and they're technical and everybody else on the call looking for you now saying, can you put that in layman's terms? So most of the time you're the translator. Right. And you're dealing with budget and contracts. But it definitely helps if you get something. And I think Robert mentioned get an AWS degree. There's cybersecurity. There's so many parts of tech. I have a daughter who's a junior, and she was in my room late one night, in a panic, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to be. And I'm like, I don't either, but you're not going to find out tonight. So get out. You know, and I say, well, there's always technology. And she just thinks, oh, I don't want to do that boring job. But but I'm like, you don't have to do or be the CIO. You know, there's so many different components.
Absolutely.
You know, even gaming now, we saw how big gaming has become in this space. I mean, there's things that, you know, you never get bored in the field of technology. I'm sure many of us that, oh, if I can go back and get this certification or get that certification, it's nonstop of the possibility.
And Kirk, I wanted to add two things. I mentioned one of them earlier, vision. You know, to be a great leader, you got to have vision. You got to be able to see the big picture. You can't be stuck on that little small thing, or be so in love with one technology that you don't see the next thing. You know, I know we had NetWare Novell there for a long time, and I tried to get my Treasury department. If you know that, then you're a true technologist. I tried to get I work for a nonprofit, and I tried to get the Treasury department to get off of Novell, but the treasurer just didn't want to learn anything new. Yeah, I think it was like Novell 411. And yeah, DOS based thing. And we had to have a 95 system to run it. And I was like, what? We have to get off this. And you know, that thing crashes and you're in trouble. And so you have to be able to adapt and be willing to learn new stuff. You can't be stuck and in love with that one thing. You got to move.
That's good. That's good. Well, listen, I just want to give everybody a moment to just say one final word, and then we will close it out. So we're going to start with Dr. Marshall and make our way around to Dr. Berman. Just a final word.
The final word that I would give, because we didn't really get to it.
I know.
And just wanted to leave something for the parents that's dealing with technology right now. I would say, don't be afraid of it. Get in there and, you know, look and see what your kids are doing. One of the biggest things that we didn't touch on or get a chance to is privacy and security.
Yeah.
Even if you don't understand the technology, you want to, you know, maybe sit side by side and see what your student's supposed to be doing. Most of the time when you click in applications, you can't break anything. Ask questions, you know, maybe of the IT person or maybe even the teacher, and just have some patience. I know we're all frustrated, you know, when systems go down or they don't work when they're supposed to. The pandemic is all new to us, whereas IT is not. But we do know that we do have trouble sometimes, but we will get through it. And just don't be afraid to ask questions. But the biggest concern is privacy and security, and making sure that you have strong passwords, and you know your cameras, your webcam is off when you're not using it, and your students are not sharing passwords and things of that nature, or going to sites that they don't need to be on.
Wow, very, very critical information. Absolutely, thank you for sharing. Bill Wolfer.
To build on what Dr. Marshall is saying, yes, it's going to be a challenge this year. Yet, I believe it's going to be our greatest moment, especially in technology, and how we use it, how we engage and communicate, and so forth. And I have to admit, I'm kind of excited about where this is going, even though I'm also very frightened or scared that with all the students we have and so forth, that we really hit the mark each and every time. And so with all the tools and technology we have, this is going to be a great academic year, and it will happen if we will it. So
that's good. Thank you, Robert Henley.
Growth mindset. That's something that we all need to develop. You parents that are out there and your students, COVID-19 is an example of having the growth mindset, being able to pivot and change and grow. And to Dr. Marshall's point, there's so many fields in technology, you know, the programmer, the network administrator, you know, the project manager, the web designer, the database, you know, developer. You can find a niche in technology. Don't let it scare you. We all have to learn it. We all have to go through growing pains. That's life. But once you adopt that growth mindset and not be not be afraid of failure and dive into it, you're going to be so successful.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Michael Cato.
Yeah, the piece I would add is just, we need you, right? Our field needs greater representation from more communities than we have right now. The percentage of specifically Black CIOs in higher ed is low single digits,
Wow.
like 3 or 4% the last time I looked at the data, and which is a stunning indictment of our historical practices. And it shows up in some really difficult ways when we are serving different communities, right? Our student populations are dramatically different than many of our organizations do. And so I think many more of our institutions are now starting to wrap their heads around what it means to really recruit differently, to encourage more people into the pipeline. And so if you are anywhere along the spectrum in K through 20, if you have an interest, there are many of us who are in the field who would love to partner with you to help kind of clarify what those opportunities are. So just let us know.
Absolutely. That's good. Thank you. That's a very relevant point. Dr. Berman.
I really appreciate that, Michael. It's so important. And women as well, are so underrepresented in these roles. I guess I'll just close by going back to the issue of what does a CIO really need to know. And I have perspective of having a liberal arts BS degree as an undergraduate, and I have a PhD in computer science. And I would say 90% of what I learned in my undergraduate I use every day, and maybe 2% of what I learned in my computer science PhD I use. So the value of that, having a good education, could be from a community college and a state college. It could be from a university. It could be from a historically Black college. It could be from a liberal arts college. It's having those experiences and those great teachers and learning to think critically, as I think Dr. Marshall said. Those are the real keys. And then once you have that, you can add the technology on top.
Excellent. Man, I can't thank you guys enough. Wow. A lot of good feedback in the comments as well. People really resonating with what has been shared. Also, they really appreciated hearing from the perspective of the educational technology leaders and what we go through and how we view some of the current events of the day and how we see some of the trends and how they're affecting us and different things that we can get out and get ahead of and things that we can do in our families. And so I want to say a word specifically to our panel for taking the time and coming out and sharing with us. And for those who stuck with us throughout the hour and 26 minutes that we've been on here, I want to say a word of thanks to you as well. Hopefully at some point in the conversation, you got a chance to peek behind the veil a little bit to see some things connect and even hopefully, that light bulb went off and you had that aha moment where you got a chance to figure out a little bit better how it all works. Next week on the show, next Monday, we will have another panel of technology leaders. A little more generic in the sense that they're not all from higher ed, though we do have some who will be from higher ed as well. But we're going to get a chance to hear the perspective from these leaders as well and have a conversation around leadership and technology as opposed to technology leadership. So we hope that you'll join us for that discussion as well. Again, to my distinguished panel, to Michael Berman, Michael Cato, Robert Henley, Bill Wolfer, and Kimberly Marshall, thank you for taking the time to come and share your unique perspectives and from your expertise with our audience today. For the How It All Works family, we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good evening.